Welcome back to the show. Now, after a month off, a nice relaxed Charles Tarbey joined us with the latest numbers from around Australia. Have you been in contact with the numbers, being overseas all the time?
I prepared all the figures for Tom while I was away, so if he pretended that he was the one putting all the information together, we need to have a talk to him.
So, how much have things changed since you've been away, in terms of the clearance rates and stuff?
You know, it's pretty much the same as expected. The only difference is that there's a little bit more stock coming in at the top end, and the top end isn't really moving, so you've got this stock coming on with an anticipation. I think a lot of agents have got some vendors that might have higher expectations than normal because of the way the market's been reported of recent
And is the
times.
top end you're talking $1 million plus, or kind of 5 or 10 million plus?
2 million plus,
right.
yeah, 2 million plus, that sort of marketplace. You remember we had a chat about this before I went away. We talked about boom, the word boom, and I said, look, I don't think that's there, and I still don't think that's there. And I up the top end again, a lot of people are hoping that it's there because that moves really quickly when it moves.
Yeah.
I don't think that's going to move very quickly.
And I think that's been a lot of the commentary in the papers the last few weeks, that it's not as hot.
I can't read Spanish or German, so I couldn't tell you.
So certainly on the clearance rate graph, what are the rough numbers now?
Yeah, look, Chris, it hit 72.5%, but it's been pretty much like that for a while. Sydney again was the star at 79.1. Melbourne followed at 74. But the interesting thing was all of the other capital cities were over 50. Brisbane hit 50.4, which is fantastic for Brisbane, and Perth hit 64.3. Now, that's reasonably rare when you look at those two capital cities. So they're getting some strength back in their marketplace. So the clearance rates are pretty good for those regions. You look around there.
And obviously Tom was talking about potentially more properties coming on for sale. You're saying the top end. What about across the board?
I missed Tom's wonderful presentation. I was just quietly driving here. Look, across the board it's 0.48% up. Last week Tom would have reported 2.15%, and I hope he would have reported 0.96% the week before, but you never know with Tom because he's got those figures with his clearance rates where we have that discussion. It's only mild. It's only a mild increase, but it's a steady increase. There's a pattern, and that's all we're looking for, is just that pattern.
But are your agents hesitant to sell before auction because of the market the way it is, or actually letting it go to auction? Is that what they're trying to do?
Well, the recommendation is always, particularly now, to let it go to auction. Certainly if I was auctioning a personal property, I'd be letting it go all the way to auction right now.
Yeah. So what about the renters? What's happening with the rent price?
Again, there's a pattern there. We've been sitting in this steady holding pattern for a little while. If you look at the chart, you'll see it start to flatten out. Sydney is sitting at 12.66%, Melbourne at 7.07%, Perth at 18.02%, but if you take those three capital cities, you've got a 12.58%, and we've been sitting at that increase or that flat line for a little while, so there's not much movement there. So again, another pattern's kicking in, and that's also what's showing in the vacancy rates as well.
Yeah, so we'll pull up the vacancy graph, because coming into summer, do you find, like I know for my coastal properties, then that changes quite a bit, but when you look at the whole of Australia, does summer or winter make much difference?
No, I don't think so. It can sometimes, but right now there have been no patterns in the marketplace. There's been no winter or summer, or spring. It's just been whatever's been happening at the time. So Sydney is the best performer at 1.67%, followed by Melbourne at 3.02%. But Perth is one we've been talking about for a while now. They have vacancy rates hit 4.9% last week, so an average of the three of 3.2%. But again, there's that pattern occurring. If you look at other areas around the region, you go back, we talked about New Zealand last time. Well, in New Zealand, they've got a slightly different marketplace than we have. Their vacancy rates are certainly higher in parts, but there's property starting to come out of the ground in New Zealand, starting to show in the apartments, and we're going to see, I think, a fair bit of movement and activity again in the investor market. That's where we're starting to see more work.
Sounds good. Wonderful to have you back. Thanks for joining us as well, Stuart. See you guys next week.
Thank you.
And thanks for joining us at home, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Until then, I'm Chris Gray. Good night.